What is up, everybody? What is up? We are live. Thank you all for joining. In about 10 minutes, we should be joined by Quinn from Man of Medim, and we'll be doing our new Tuesday night occult live stream. And we do actually have topics for tonight, rather than just randomly talking about whatever. We do have topics that we'll be covering this evening. So welcome. In about 7 minutes, or shortly before, depends on when he gets on. But we should be joined by Quinn from Man of Medim shortly. We'll be doing a dual live stream where we will be discussing occultism, esotericism, mysticism. And I think it's going to be a regular thing. So if you guys like the Wednesday night live streams I do with Alchemic Mason, this will be a new one that we'll be adding to the repertoire. And there he is. There he is. Good evening, my friend. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
Doing just fine. Enjoying the light flurries of snow out here in Colorado once again.
Whoa, it's snowing out there?
Yeah, it is. It's snowing this morning, went away, came back. It's this whole winter, and even in the spring has been pretty heavy with snow.
Wow. Yeah, it today was the first like real day of spring here.
Uh,
It got up to like 70 and then tomorrow's going to be 75. It was clear, sunny skies. It's been great here. So
oh, okay.
that's crazy. That's crazy that
Yeah,
it's snowing out there still. My goodness.
yeah, it's something else over here. The whole climate is just all over the place. They say in Denver that the only thing predictable about the weather is its unpredictability. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's crazy, dude. How long does it usually take you to respond to emails? I don't recall getting an email in my Mystical Rebel lately. I get push notifications to my phone. Let me take a look here. I'll pull it up on my PC.
Gabrielle, hello, Gabrielle.
Yeah, I don't have any. My last email that like was sent to me was 6 days ago, and that person and I have been going back and forth. So unless that's you and you mean that I didn't respond to that, which I believe I did, I don't see any new emails other than the person that I've been in correspondence with. So, but welcome everybody. Welcome. We are doing our. This is week number 2.
I think this is three actually.
Oh, this is 3. We've done 2 already. All right, this is week number 3 for myself and Quinn from Man of Medim, doing our esoteric live streams. We'll be discussing. We've got a few topics tonight. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to my short list that I already came up with. Um,
No, actually, those that list that you got a mixture of small talk mixed with some pretty hefty subjects there. So we'll go ahead and keep it at that.
all right, cool. Give me 1 second. I want to respond to this guy about the email. I sent it to you about a week ago. Okay. Well, unless you're this female, which I don't believe so based on your name, but I could be wrong. I've been, unless that's you, I did respond. I sent you the book recommendations and the ritual for ancestor veneration and the head wash. Um, but if you're talking about any other email, I've not gotten anything after that except from TikTok. So I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're talking. Okay, I'll resend it to you. Okay, yes, please do resend it, and make sure you're sending it to Joe the Mystic at themysticalrebel.com. All right, sorry about that, guys. Welcome, and sorry, Quinn.
You're
All
good.
right, so tonight we're going to be discussing. I'll say that they're a bit more on the intermediate side of occultism. We'll be moving away from the 101 basic type stuff. But for you guys in the audience, please feel free if you have any questions, whether they're 101 or not. Please feel free to ask them, and we will do our best to answer. But for the main topics of discussion, we're going to kind of move from the beginner type stuff and talk about maybe some intermediate to I might even consider one or even two of these questions kind of advanced. So, um, but yeah, before we get started, is there anything you wanted to talk about before I bring up the first topic?
No, let's go ahead and get it started.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna go a little bit out of order here. The main one that I want to talk about, I don't want to do that up front. So let's start with, I guess, the light one. Using tarot cards in ritual and spell work. So using tarot as like the basis for your spell or for your ritual. So rather than bringing in, I don't know, herbs or, anatheme and, I don't know, layman's and all that other stuff, there are cards that could represent each of those things. And there's a card that could represent you. There's a card that could represent the triangle. There's a card that could represent the circle. Um, so, how do you feel about that? People using tarot as their basis to channel these energies to cast magic, to do spells and rituals.
I mean, I think it's totally justified. Um, in the Golden Dawn, that's actually a big part of their work is using tarot and more than just divination, but you could use the cards for many different purposes. I know um, when I did a invocation of Selene a while back, as in the moon goddess, and I used uh, the the Empress, the High Priestess, and the World cards, Major Arcana, to help channel um, the I I hate to use a word such as abstract as energies, but to help
That's fine.
channel the energy of Selene and the moon
Okay.
being threefold with the crone, the maiden, and the well, give me the
The
crone, the
mother?
maiden, yeah, and the mother. So the maiden would have been the world, the mother would have been the high priestess, and then the crone would have been the empress. And I actually use the major arcana quite a bit. And it's funny that you bring that up because right now I set up my altar for Thursday for my second evocation, and I have the tarot card that I drew, which told me what spirit to evoke next, and I have that card on the altar to
Wow.
help, yeah, to help with the whole operation. So I mean I think it's great. I've seen other altars from like hoodoo practitioners that use the De Lumine Ra. I've
Hmm.
seen some of his altars using the major arcana. Pope Runyon has talked about scrying particular major arcana during ceremonial work. So yeah, I think they're extremely versatile when it comes to ceremonial work. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be. If you take, say, the what is it, the Marseille deck, or yeah, it's Marseille, right?
Hmm.
If you take the Marseille deck and then you put that up to the neck to the Rider Waite, you're probably not going to get as much symbolism through it. You're probably gonna you're probably gonna get a little bit more of a contemplation
Right.
and through the Rider Waite because of the symbolism in the cards than you would the Marseille, but or like the Thoth deck from Crawley. So these the the visuals that these provide for us in ceremony are extremely um, useful. And I don't see why one should even disregard using tarot for their work unless they feel a personal way about it.
Excellent. Yeah. So personally, I've never used tarot in my spell work. I've used tarot for path working, and I've used the uh, Tatwa, which my deck is on the back of the Enochian Scrying Tarot. So I guess you could say I've used tarot to help me relearn scrying during the time that I was doing Grimtrad and was like neglecting everything that wasn't Grimtrad. So I had to reteach myself scrying, and I use cards for that. But other than that, I can't say that I've used any tarot-based spells or rituals. So I'm wondering during so would you call what you were doing with Celine an evocation? Would you call it
No,
that, or would you?
more so an invocation because I wasn't trying to
Okay.
conjure her. I wasn't trying to call her forth exactly and bring
Okay.
her out. It was more of calling down and invoking her powers and calling them
Okay.
down. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, because I've always wondered, because I know Donald Tyson in his Portable Magic talks about evoking an elemental, and I believe it's a fire or an air elemental that he uses as an example. And I've always wondered if you're going for an evocation, because you do have the cards that represent the circle and the cards that represent the triangle and you and the spirit and all this other stuff, how exactly it would manifest. Um, so yeah, I was just wondering if you had any insight on
So,
that.
like, are you saying substituting particular tools like the triangle of art with a card, like, and
Yes.
something along those lines?
Yes.
Um, you know, possibly. See, the cool thing about like when they teach you about like tarot in the Golden Dawn is as and a lot of other um ceremonial magic with the Shemham Faresh and the 36 deacons and so forth. There are angels that are actually attributed to the minor arcana
Mhm.
when you look at the 36 deacons. And with so it's thought that these minor arcana actually channel the energies of these particular angels. So, as in substituting the triangle of art, I don't know about that exactly because the triangle of art is acts more of a constraint, as in like a spiritus loci, a location for the
Mhm.
spirit. Um, but possibly, say if I had a triangle and I happen to choose a few cards that corresponded with particular Shem HaMephoresh angels that were attributed to particular deacons within the wheel, the zodiacal wheel. So I don't have a picture of it, but in the Kabbalistic Tarot by Robert Wang, it gives a whole wheel and it shows all of the minor arcana and in the degrees of the zodiacal wheel and the Shem Fresh angels that would be attributed to each one of these. So if we're talking,
Interesting.
yeah, so these since these minor arcana are thought to possibly channel the virtues of these angels, I don't see why one couldn't implement these as a type of thwarting angel type of aspect that you would see in the Goetia of Dr. Red. I could see that happening. But that would be extremely modern, and as Solomonic practitioners, we tend to be a bit more traditional. Uh,
Exactly.
but I could see that happening, and if I knew more about that actual that particular system, not system exactly, but if I knew how to actually utilize the minor arcana for something like that, and I was familiar with the Shem HaMephoresh angels, then the 72 names of God and so forth, then I might be implementing those. But that's kind of like a whole nother route that I might
Right.
explore down the line.
So it's interesting that you brought up the zodiac. One of the earlier questions that was asked by Proletarian, he says, "What are your thoughts on using the Decans to constrain Goetic demons?"
So that might have answered it, being it so like seeing that the 36 deacons, decans are attributed to particular angels, then you could possibly invoke these angels through these cards
Hmm.
as something like talismans,
Right.
and use them as a thwarting concept.
Okay.
I wouldn't say constrain, because constrain is a bit of a using it in that context, it ends up meaning what a lot of these demonolators want it to mean. Not
Hmm.
all of them, but some of them. Um, but constrain, it doesn't exactly, because they're talking in the thwarting angel sense that you see in the Testament of Solomon.
Yeah.
Um, but as I said earlier before, constraining means to centralize the spirit in a central location through a spiritus loci. So using the decans as to channel energies of their associated angels to help thwart particular goetic spirits, possibly. Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
It's one of those things where you could experiment with it. Experiment. You don't know until you try.
That's true. That's very true. Um, so Mermaid Moonbeam has a question since you're talking about tarot and using tarot. She says, for my first tarot deck, I'm thinking about getting major arcana only. Is this okay, or is minor arcana important? So I would say that it's mainly up to you, but the minor arcana in conjunction with the major arcana helps give context. It helps give a more full reading, in my opinion. It helps to add layers where maybe the major arcana might go um, a little high level. Sometimes you might need to be able to dig a little deeper, and the minor arcana can assist with that. But I do have a deck that is major arcana only, the Serpent Icons from Anathema. This is major only. So they are certainly useful. But to be honest, I don't use that deck to read. So if you're, I only use that deck for like meditation, path working, as Quinn was saying earlier, kind of like talismans. Outside of that, I wouldn't use that deck for reading. That's just me. If you wouldn't mind something like that, certainly go for it. And I'm sure Quinn would like to add something to that.
I know that like for like spiritual readings, when in the old temple that I was part of, we would you don't have to, but you could take out all of your major arcana and just use those for like exclusively spiritual readings, because of how in depth they are concerning the more abstract matters uh, and so forth. When the minor arcana are those more so speak, not all the time, but they more so speak to the more mundane features within life. Not all the time, but that's how I've usually read it. So every now and then, I really don't do it a lot, but there's been times where I've taken out the major arcana only when I was trying to figure out something about my spiritual path, and like where I was headed with it, and what I'm asking particular deities something. I would only take out the major arcana because they dealt with those more lofty um, aspects and subjects. Uh, but in the end, it really doesn't matter too much. It's really how you feel at the time. If something tells you to only use the major arcana, then just go ahead and listen to that little voice, listen to the intuition. Either if you have a good enough connection and you're super familiar with your deck, I don't think it really matters how many cards you take out or leave in there. It's going to read you.
Excellent advice. I hope that answers your question, Mermaid Moonbeam, and thank you for the question. Um, there was another thing. With the Solabusca. Are you familiar with the Solabusca, Quinn?
No, 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 I am not.
Okay, so that's a deck from the 14th century in Milan. Sorry, excuse me, Ferrara, which was a city-state near Milan in Italy. It was ruled by the d'Este family. Hercule d'Este was the patriarch, and their super descendant. I'm sure you're familiar with her work, Sorita d'Este. She's a descendant of that line. So it
Yes,
was her and
yes,
her
yes.
family. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes. I just got done reading her liminal rights book on Hecate.
Yeah, she's great. Her insights on a lot of esoteric topics are next level. Um, but so apparently, uh, that family way back in the day was supposedly part of a quote unquote dark Gnostic cult of Saturn. And being that, of course, the main religion was Christianity, the state religion was Christianity, they had to practice this in secret. So, according to Peter Mark Adams in his book, The Game of Saturn, in order to communicate rituals to each other, they would hide them, not in books, but in other objects. And for his birthday, I believe it was one year, he had someone commission a special deck, and that deck is the Solabusca, which is right here. And this deck supposedly, and it's from Scarlet Imprint, um, and I'll show you what the cards look like. Um, this supposedly contains images within the deck that uh, sorry, I got the mirror effect on that reference certain ritual actions. So not all the cards, but there are certain cards in here that are supposed to be ritual actions. Like we can see here the sacrifice of a child. There's a fire there, a guy holding a baby over the fire. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about the cult of Saturn here. You've got a guy who we think is a high priest or a hierophant or something, who might be in a state of frenzy. He's talking to a head on a stick. So we this is believed to be some form of necromancy or something along those lines. But yeah, so there's supposedly a hidden ritual grimoire within this deck, and Peter Mark Adams, in his book *The Game of Saturn*, seeks to unravel it. Of course, there's no definitive proof. It's not like the Este family came out and said, yes, this is true. But Sorita Dieste did have to give her permission for the book to be written and the deck to be made. She didn't put up any objections. So that would lead one to believe that perhaps there might be something to the hidden grimoire within a deck. So this would be the first time I've ever heard of anything like this. Magic being hidden within a deck. I've heard of it being hidden in other things like on walls and things like that. But within a deck is very interesting. I'd like to know your thoughts on something like the Solabusca.
Well, I don't know anything about that deck. That's actually very interesting. But I'm not surprised. A lot of things were hidden in the Rider Waite deck that had to do with, Golden Dawn esotericism and magic and so forth. So when you understand the correspondences between the major and minor arcana,
Hmm.
you're able to access various, I guess you could say, revelations and so forth, when it comes to practical magic and mysticism. So I'm not surprised that there's stories hidden within those cards because
Yeah.
uh, m- when we're looking at like the Thoth deck and the Rider Waite, that's what they pretty much are. There's so much meaning behind these. That's why they're great for path working, because
Yeah.
you could just unlock um, so many different things behind these cards,
Yeah.
especially when you learn the correct correspondences. So yeah, I mean that's awesome. I'm gonna have to check that deck out, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So you may not be able to get this exact one. I think they're sold out of this one, but there are a lot of other publishers that or tarot deck makers that have made similar decks for the Solabusca. But the book, Peter Mark Adams, the Game of Saturn, that should still be available, and I highly recommend that. If you get the Solabusca, you'd be doing yourself a huge disservice if you did not delve into the lore behind it, and you can only get that with the Game of Saturn. It goes into all of it. It's a phenomenal text. Um, for me, it kind of does make sense because when I give readings, at least in person, one of the first things that I tell people is outside of tarot being, or maybe you should look at tarot as a map. Outside of that, it's a story, right? It plots out a story. There's usually a beginning, a middle, and an end. So and there's usually characters, and there's usually arcs, and there's usually some sort of a issue that they have to overcome. I mean, for all intents and purposes, a tarot reading could be a soap opera or a horror film or an action film, depending on what period of life one may be in. And for a deck like the Solabusca to actually contain hidden rituals, not just meanings, but actual ritual actions that you can take from beginning to end, it's almost like a story. So if you were going to hide it in anything other than a grimoire, a tarot deck does make a lot of sense. If you look at it as like a story, having a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a ritual has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I think it kind of plays on that. At least that's how I see it. When I was thinking about, like, I don't recall ever hearing of another deck that hides an entire ritual grammar. So I found that very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. Oh, Dylan Rose, did I miss anything? Just got to work. No, you actually really didn't miss too much. We were just talking about tarot for a little bit, 20 minutes in. But
Yeah.
I did one of my final papers before I left the Golden Dawn. I um through each grade we were given a particular major arcana, and it had to do with like the path that we are on within that particular grade in the Sephra. And I remember reading into like the Hanged Man, and the Hanged Man is a very peculiar card. But it was kind of like the Hanged Man can be seen esoterically as as a sacrifice of self for a higher knowledge. And I came to this conclusion reading about the story of Odin and
Hmm.
hanging himself from the Yggdrasil, I think,
Yep.
um, from
Choose
the
yourself.
tree, and hanging himself from the tree and going down into the what is it the
I'm not familiar. I'm not that familiar with Norse
it's a
mythology.
well. It's a particular well of Wern or some, I forget the name, but this is where he found the runes. This is where he gained knowledge and magical knowledge and learned how to cast spells. And he had to injure himself. He lost an eye. He took a branch and
Yeah, I was gonna
stuck his
say he poked
eye
his
out
eye
while
out.
he was down there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was this whole thing of sacrifice to achieve a higher learning. And when you contemplate these cards and you look in and you start to kind of dive deeper, you start to kind of unlock these things. It's not exactly ceremony, but at the same time, the things that you learn are very useful for ceremony and
Yeah, yeah.
building
I would
yourself
say in a
mentally.
lot of ways, a lot of that stuff can be more important than the ceremony. A lot of the behind the scenes and being able to actually engage with something other than what you can see, touch, taste, and feel. You know, I think a lot of that might be a little more important than a lot of the ceremonies.
Oh yeah, Yeah, for sure. The ceremony is a means to an end, but it's all about
Yes.
ramping up and preparing yourself for it. That's where, all of the good stuff is that. That's what makes it so important in the end.
Yeah.
All the tool making and all the preparation and all of the focus and intention that you put into the ritual. That's where it really counts.
Amen. Abaddon of the Fifth Veil says it was Myrmir's well, or Myrmir's well. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah, yeah,
I totally probably killed that,
yeah.
but Myrmir,
I
Myrmir,
I could bring
Myrmir.
up my 13-page essay that I wrote on all that stuff, but I'm not going to bore everyone with that. But yeah, that is very familiar.
If you're interested in some of the Odinic stuff, Shani Oates wrote an Odinic trilogy. Um, uh, the Hanged God. Oh God, they're escaping me right now because I'm not into the Norse stuff. But I've seen several of of her interviews, and I have another book by her, but it's not about the Norse stuff. I just have another book by her about tradcraft. And I like her writing style. She presents a lot of information in a way that is it's not too in your face, but it's also at the same time easily digestible. And I've seen her on a lot of different podcasts, and I think she writes wonderfully. So if you're interested in any of the Odinic stuff, maybe check out her Odin trilogy. I think it's from Anathema. And I know one of them is called The Hanged God, but for some reason the other two are eluding me right now. Um,
Hmm, interesting.
yeah. Um, all right, we are about 25 minutes in, so let's go ahead and move on to the second question. I guess we'll save the main one or the one that I'm really interested in for last. So let's get into number two here. And we kind of already discussed this before. I think kind of in like the first live stream we did, and then you tagged me in that one girl's video. She deleted all your comments, bro. She like deleted all your comments, and like I was like asking her like, "What's up?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't mind the discourse and everything, but I think your friend blocked me or whatever, whatever." But so the question is Solomonic magic disrespectful to the spirits? And then, as an aside to that, and were those spirits actually deities or former gods in times past, in centuries past? So it's a two-part question. Is Solomonic magic or Grimtrad as a whole disrespectful to the spirits? And then were those spirits actually gods that were demonized by the church or something like that during past times?
Yeah. Yeah, that's those are both very hefty questions.
Yes, they are.
Um, so the first one, by the way, I ended up, yeah, I didn't, I don't associate with that creator anymore. I've already tried to educate her before on
Yeah.
particular aspects of it, and it's never met with anything that is sensible or well researched. So I just got over it, and I actually blocked her because she was just too much of a trigger for me.
Oh
I
wow.
Yeah, I got tired of debating things like this. I'm just like, you know what? It just
No, I
triggers
mean, I
me.
get it.
I'm not doing it. Anyways, so is Solomonic magic disrespectful?
Yes.
So I think
Let's talk about
the two main premises that people usually approach this on is of course have to do with the second question, is that these are deities that people revere, so they feel like utilizing them as tools or quote unquote servants is
it. Hmm.
disrespectful to these pagan gods that they revere so much. And
Hmm.
then the bigger, the more vast topic is this whole thing of free will. All right. Do spirits have free will? Because they feel like it's disrespectful because we are violating their free will.
Hmm.
Okay. So, um, me and you both love the esoteric Dr. Justin Sledge on YouTube, and he just recently had an episode on critical theory on occultism.
Yep.
And one of the things he talks about is how I didn't agree with everything that was presented in these theories, because the guy that is presented from Adorno, his writings are very like slighted and already biased against occultism.
Yeah.
But one thing I did agree with is that people tend to project humanistic traits upon the spirit realm. And I think free will is one of these.
Hmm.
Now, to be honest with you, free will itself, um, uh, so will has been talked about and philosophized about since Plato, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, and so
Right.
forth. But free will, the whole concept of free will, the actual term free will, was actually a theological term,
Hmm.
right? And so, even though, so like will has always been talked about um, whether you are free from it or not, but the actual term free will is actually somewhat of a Christian thing. I think it was like fourth century Common Era is when that term was actually
Yep.
like coined. Um, but anyways, that's besides the point. So, free will. Are we violating a spirit's free will? We don't even know exactly how to define free will.
Hmm.
Um, like, so in my opinion, free will, if it does exist, it is very much only exists within a physical world because we we make choices. Our will allows us to make choices and to choose this or that. Is it free? I don't know. You could say that all of your choices are influenced by an external or internal, stimulus or stimulant. So, something subconscious makes you make this decision or that decision, and so forth. So, in a way, we're not exactly free from these influences that make us that pretty much make us make decisions, right?
Hmm.
So I really think that will is very much something that has to do with consciousness or like with humans within the physical world, because we make our decisions based on things that influence us from the outside world and influence our internal selves. So, do spirits live that same type of experience? You could argue that, I mean, spirits of the dead, ancestors have, but then we're talking, so are they the same as they were here? Then we're getting into like phases of the soul. Like, is this the same? Is my aunt the same? Like, if I'm working with the spirit of my deceased auntie, is it the same soul as she was here, or is it just a fragment of
Right.
it? In the Golden Dawn, they teach you that, or not all temples, but like if you were looking at Green Book, they say that the lower portion of the soul can often be left upon upon the earthly realm, and then like astral spirit, like astral strays or elementals can take on that shell that was left behind, and
Hmm.
therefore then you get the ghost or the parasitic spirit that will feed on things so it doesn't dissipate.
Right.
But that's when we're getting into what exists after we leave. But when we're talking about, for instance, the goetic spirits, I don't see them as having these psychological traits of like will and consciousness to the effect that we as humans have. I do believe that they are conscious beings, but not to the extent that we as humans are. You know,
Okay.
um, I kind of see them as more driven by a particular a primal um, foundation of nature. You know, they're more driven by nature. When humans, we have a little bit more of leeway with choosing what we want to do. We're not exactly always driven by survival, because a person can know hard drugs are bad but still go towards hard drugs, you know.
Right.
We have that, sense of being able to choose. So are we violating a goetic spirit's free will when we ask them to do something for us? You have to say what you have to choose whether free will really exists for them in the first place. I know there's some people that would be like, "Oh my God, no, they totally have free will." Well,
Right.
you know, that right there is probably unverified personal gnosis, and we can't extend that onto a larger consensus that, like, no, this spirits do have free will. Not, I mean, that's a personal thing if you
Right.
feel that. And it should stay like that, honestly.
Mhm.
And then there's another part to it, that if you hire a plumber to come fix your plumbing, are you violating their free will? If you sign a contract with them, are you violating their free will? No, that's
Mhm.
just their job. That's their job. You know, I'm not violating the free will of a goetic spirit. That's just their nature. That's what
Yeah.
they do. So, and then on top of that, there a lot of these TikTok practitioners are taking the word constrain and bind, and they're like thinking of it in a very modern sense, like
Yeah.
being
Very
bound.
servitude, very slavery. Yeah.
Exactly. And they just don't understand that, no, bind as in being bound to a contract,
Mhm.
constrained as in being constrained or chained, but constrained to a particular focal point within this ritual space. So you're
Exactly.
not, so like, it's funny if you look into Heptameron, or even the key of Solomon and King, there is no spiritus loci. There's no crystal ball. There's no
Mhm.
triangle. These spirits appear all around you.
Yeah.
And so
Which could
that
be a
is what.
problem sometimes.
What's that?
Oh, no, I was just saying that that could be a problem sometimes.
Yeah, it can be a problem sometimes. And so the constraint is to really just keep them in one place. So I think they're honestly, the way they perceive these words is a bit archaic, and they're not looking at it from the context of what these words actually mean. And then, like, violating a spirit's free will, that you're getting into a philosophical topic that you will never come to, like a conclusion about, a definitive conclusion with hard evidence. That will never happen,
Right.
because will is still talked about amongst philosophers, whether it exists or not. Um, so to say that spirits have free will, uh, that's a reach. That's you're really extending yourself. And then the third part, them being these old gods, and we're disrespecting them because they deserve to be revered. We know that Baal or Baal and Astaroth and Amon and Asmodeus, they have some connections to some old
Mhm.
lore, but there's a whole nother slew of spirits there that
Exactly.
we still need to find anthropological evidence for. And then when you
Mhm.
look when you look at where Weyer got his list from, and then how they were adapted to, like, discovery of witchcraft and to the Ars Goetia. Trithemius also used like a few of these spirits for one of his texts. You start to see that some are added and some are taken away, and
Yeah.
especially with the Ars Goetia, you have three extra spirits at the end. The 70th, the 71st, and the 72nd. Oh, and the fourth. So there's four extra spirits, I believe, in Ars Goetia. So where did these come from? where there's like, oh no, there's four other gods from antiquity that we need to
Right.
add into here. It just seems like way too convoluted to be able to say like these are pagan gods. Now, don't get
Right.
me wrong, there's Solomonic practitioners that do believe that, but not everyone shares that same view. Some you can see that there's pretty likely evidence for it, but the majority of them I have yet to see.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. When it comes to are they former gods, yeah, I'm on the same page. Unless we have any sort of evidence that Simages used to be some Aztec god, or Shax used to be some Persian deity of storms or something like that. I don't know why people say that. Other than the four that we know of. There's still a good 67 out there that that are just dubious. So I don't go with that. As for if it's disrespectful, when it comes to the spirits in grimoire tradition, so that's angels, demons, planetary spirits, aerial spirits, the elementals, the Genius Loci, zodiacal spirits, zonar spirits, and uh, that's really bad. I mean, the dead too, but that's a little different. Um, uh, I look at them as, how do I want to say this? So all those beings that we use in grimoire tradition all come from the same region of the world, right? We don't include Hindu devas, or we don't include some Celtic spirit, like the land whites or something like that. We don't include you know Chinese dragons or anything like that. We only use the spirits that come from the Semitic regions, the Hellenic regions, and the Middle Eastern regions, and Northeastern Africa. That's it, right? So I look at all those beings coming from the same region as all being under the same sort of rulership. And if we go to Agrippa's, or pseudo Agrippa's, fourth book, he has an entire chapter outlined for the Liber Spiritum, in which he gives instruction for how one can enter into a contract with the spirit and get their permission for future methods being done. He's essentially instructing you in that chapter on how to write your own grimoire or your own book of spirits, how you can write your own Goetia or your own pseudomarchia or whatever. And in there, he explicitly states that you have to get the permission, that you can't force them. When you call them in the ritual from the previous chapter, there are no constraints, there is no curses, there is no bindings. These spirits have to utilize their own choice in order to sign their name in the Liber Spiritum. And if they sign their name and then they stamp their seal where the mark of the spirit is supposed to be, that's them signing that contract stating that I will come when you use this method. They sign their name. They have no choice. This is a spiritual contract. So even if it was disrespectful, way back when, they could have said, "No, I'm not going to do this. Let's work out something else. Let's try to work out another sort of method to contact me." But instead, they said, "Yeah, this is fine." Now, why would they tell you that it's disrespectful and they don't like it? Precisely for the fact that they have no choice. That when they come, they have to do what I ask. They have no choice. I'm pretty sure they would like a choice. I'm pretty sure they would want to be able to tell you no if they could. They can't tell me no. They could try, but they can't tell me no. You've got no choice. This is the contract that you signed. Sorry, you got to do your end of the bargain. Right? It's the same way on earth, as above, so below. If you sign a contract and you decide to go against your contract, something's going to happen to you. No, I'm not saying mafia style. You're going to get, your fingers cut off or anything like that, but you're going to get sued. Depending on the contract, you could go to jail. You could be, fraud and all this other nonsense. Just hold up your end of the bargain, and that's exactly what these spirits do. At least when it comes to Grimtrad. So yeah, I don't think that it's disrespectful in the least. I think that they had their chance to say no. They said yes. So if they change their mind centuries later, sorry, I guess maybe hope that someone doesn't contact you using the Solomonic methods, I guess. But yeah, I don't think that it's disrespectful. Now, I will say that you shouldn't be contacting every spirit using Grimtrad, right? I don't contact the dead using Grimtrad, and I try my best not to contact the elementals or the Genius Loci using Grimtrad. But it's kind of hard since, for the last 11, 12 years, that's pretty much been my main spirit contact method. Um, but I do my best to rely on hoodoo or witchcraft or neo-shamanism for anything that's not like an angel, a demon, a planetary spirit, something like that. But when it comes to those spirits, I don't think that it's disrespectful. Um, I think that it can get to a point where it becomes disrespectful just because you can use the the conjuration of the fire or the curses doesn't mean that you should or that you always have to. If the spirit comes when called and agrees to do the work, there's no need to do any of that stuff. If you just do that stuff because you're an asshole, then in that case, then yes, it could be considered disrespectful or whatever. But just on the general outset, no. And then not to mention, I can't speak for every grimoire, but the vast majority of grimoires that give conjurations for these demons usually give like three or more conjurations. So the spirit has ample opportunity to present itself, right? It's not like, oh, I called him once, he didn't come, so burn his seal. No, you get the conjuration, you get a greater conjuration, a more powerful conjuration, an even more powerful conjuration, and that's what they're literally called. There's no like special title. It's literally called a greater conjuration, a more powerful conjuration, an even more powerful conjuration. So the spirit has ample opportunity to come. It's not like, we call them once, they don't come, and then we beat them. They have ample opportunity to come. And then if they still decide not to honor the contract, you are well within your spiritual rights to enact whatever punishments the grimoire says that you are spiritually legal to enact. So that's how I look at it. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the cosmology and in which these protocols exist. You
Mhm.
know, we are within our right to call them forth and so forth, and ask them to do such things because of the cosmology, and it very much is a Christian-based thing. We are, made in the image of God and so forth. So it's usually seen that we have this spiritual authority to do such. Now, if you don't, of course, if you don't subscribe to the Christian faith or any type of, not even just the Christian faith, but subscribe to that particular cosmology, you're going to have some problems with it.
Right.
So I could see that happening with some people, but the thing is that, like, you're just talking about the greater the greater curse and so forth. You have a lot of Solomonic practitioners that even say it's like you probably don't want to use that. You're gonna want to just rethink, go back to the drawing boards and rethink how to go about it. Because if you don't see the spirit, I mean, whether it comes or not, that's going to be, I didn't have an appearance of a spirit, but yet I got what I had asked for.
Hmm.
So if God forbid I actually went through with the spirit chain and they're just right there like, hey, I'm right here, dude. You don't need to
Exactly.
do that. So it's not really, these days it's not really like advised by experienced practitioners to go through with such extreme measures.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like let's remember that, like, the whole binding and constraining of spirits was not exclusive to Solomonic magic. This goes all the way back to Mesopotamian religion and magic of
Yep.
calling upon
The Rod and
Enki
Ring talks
and
about it.
Ishtar and other gods, and even calling on Pazuzu and so forth, to help bind Lamashtu and other demons and so forth. You
Hmm.
know, um, it's not just about using the forces of good to constrain the forces of evil. If
Yeah.
that was so, then you wouldn't have the four directional kings on your table of practice for the drawing spirits into crystals when you're trying to invoke angels, but yet you have the four demon kings around the crystal ball. It wouldn't make sense if that's what the whole premise was. So I just think that, honestly, people confuse Solomonic magic for they scratch the surface, they see dirt under their nails and think that's all there is. But you got
Yeah.
to go deeper to actually see what it's about, to see the roots and the origins, you know.
Amen,
And
brother.
yeah, it's a shame that such information is getting peddled all over TikTok concerning this stuff, because it's being done by people who I'll tell you right now, if that person who I blocked had practiced as much as she says she did, she wouldn't be saying the things that she does. You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
Exactly.
Uh, and,
They always give themselves away.
yeah, exactly. Tell me you don't practice Solomonic magic without telling me you don't practice Solomonic magic. And you know, and picture me making a video talking about, well, demonolators do this and it's wrong. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, come on. I have friends on here that are demonolators, and I have no gripe with what they do. You know, because it's a personal thing. You
Right.
know, if that's how they want to approach the spirits, then that's how they want to approach the spirits. That's up to them. That's their prerogative, you know? Like, I chose this system because have always been into ceremonial magic. And in
Hmm.
looking, grimoires were always mysterious to me. So I wanted to decipher what these meant, and that was a personal goal for me. You know, it
Yeah.
was my own path. So it is, it's a bit upsetting to see people that will just be like, oh, they're disrespecting demons, they're constraining and binding them when they have no clue about what the process is and what Solomonic magic actually entails.
Exactly. Exactly. And before we move on to the final topic here, I do want to just read a couple of these comments. The Striking Rainbow says offerings help. They love blood. Yes, that is true. We actually spoke about that a couple days ago on my solo live stream. I had talked about spirits and their interest in blood or alcohol or tobacco or honey or something like that. And we were talking about how it's not the blood itself or the tobacco itself or the alcohol itself that they're after. It's the essence that is within it that they feed off of. So in the case of blood, it's life essence, right? They crave, and it's probably one of the most powerful sort of energy transferences that we could give them. When we give them offerings of tobacco or rum or blood or whatever, it gives them a how do I want to say this? Enough power, I guess, to do work on our behalf. That's why when you're trying to develop a relationship with your ancestors or any of the dead or whatever, you have to cultivate it first. You can't just go in asking for it. You have to give them not only the means to be able to give you what you're asking for, but it has to be done on a consistent basis so that way they can make that sort of connection. So, yes, they certainly do love blood.
Uh,
Um,
I would like to add something to that.
yeah, sure.
Um, there are traditions where blood is used, especially like when you have some ATRs that actually, you know, when they sacrifice an animal, that animal is usually feeding a whole community.
Oh, yeah.
And there's these animals are
Nothing goes
treated
to
very
waste.
well. You know, and everything. It's a very thought out process. It isn't just like slice a
No,
neck, toss the carcass down the alley. It's a
no,
very
no.
thought out process,
It's
and there's
very
a lot of,
humane.
yeah, very humane. Much respect is shown. But one thing that I never messed with was offering blood, because I'm not
Yeah.
part of
Mm.
a tradition to where you are initiated and you are given like a head spirit and so forth, and you are initiated into a relationship with particular guardian spirits
Right.
that could help out when you are giving offerings of something so extreme. So in my position, I was always told, not always told, but looking at other conversations with like Aaron Leach and so forth, talking about how um, if I was to give blood as an offering at an altar, there's a good chance that that spirit would become bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
And you're
There's
just
always
talking about
that
how
risk.
you have to be consistent with it.
Yep.
You know, you have a little bit more leverage when it's water and tea lights, and then you're like, all right, I'll give you liquor this next time, and then it's like a step up. Oh, now I'll give you a plate of food. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
up. So there are traditions that use blood, but these a lot of those traditions know what the hell they're doing.
Hmm.
And, and blood offering isn't something that I would recommend for someone who's new at it,
Yeah. No.
um, and so forth. You know, so yeah, that's what I have to offer to that.
Yeah, guys, stick to water, tobacco, rum, things like that. Milk, honey. Yeah, don't use blood. And if you absolutely must, if you truly want to use blood, don't use your own. Use animal blood. You'd be very surprised at how easy it may be to get it. Hopefully you live close, but I know if you live near butchers, if you ask them in a not weird way, don't creep them out. But if you ask them, they usually have to get rid of the blood of the pigs and the stuff that they slaughter. Uh, and they just throw it out. It's not like they sell it to somebody or anything like that. So I'm sure, they wouldn't mind giving it to you. I know a couple people who do that, who live in like New York and Miami and stuff like that. They'll just go to a local a local butcher, and just be like, whenever you're about to get a fresh whatever, let me know so I can arrange, either to come down there and get it or send someone down there to get it, and I'll give you a few bucks, whatever. But yeah, don't use your own blood.
And a piece of
Uh,
raw meat should suffice as well too. A piece of raw meat, there's blood
yeah,
in
I
there.
never thought of
You
that.
know, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Cracho, welcome, brother. All right, so let's move on here to the final topic as we wind down. Uh, so this one, I kind of want to preface a bit. I was reading Conjure Codex 4, and it was a chapter that I hadn't read before, and it was by Gavin Fox.
Is that the
And
more recent one that came out after JSK passed on?
no, that's five. Five. Four
Okay.
came out a year before that.
Uh,
Um, and I'll just read it. It's a very short paragraph. It's literally like three sentences, and it made me really think. Here we go, right here. So this is from Gavin Fox. We're in the Conjure Codex. This is book 4. This is by Gavin Fox, and it is called "Treasures of the Grave: A Practical Guide for the Aspiring Necromancer." And it says, so this is at the end. Like, this is the second to last paragraph. So this is at the very, very end. It states, as this article highlights, there is much more to modern necromancy than simply digging up the dead and stealing their skulls. At its unbeating heart, it can be best viewed as working with the essence of place, as opposed to the physical remains of those who have long since passed beyond the veil. So that oh, are you frozen? I think you might be frozen.
no, no, I was
Oh, okay.
just I was focusing on what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. I thought you were stuck looking. Sorry. Um, but yeah, so just that paragraph right there led me to contemplate sort of what he was saying, because it's that last sentence that made me think. So the question is, can certain necromantic spirits, such as the gatekeepers of the graveyards, be considered genius loci? And the reason I ask that is because of his last sentence of that paragraph, where he states that at its unbeating heart, it can be best viewed as working with the essence of place. So he's making a distinction where you're not working with spirits of the dead, you're working with the death essence or the death current of that place, of that cemetery, or of that haunted place, or wherever there's a bunch of dead things. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that, because I literally in my 20 years have never thought about necromancy as, I mean, I know, I of course know of death essence, but I never considered working necromancy and the spirits of necromancy who might be specific to that place could be considered genius loci. So I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. You know, to drop an analogy of this, so this graveyard, pretty much, it emanates this this energy of death.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And are we saying that the is this energy, does it feed? Is it something that the spirits of the cemetery feed on, or is it something that they like help like permeate in a way?
Yeah. I would say most necromancers that I know of that work with death essence over the spirits of the dead would probably agree it's the latter. It's something that I guess in necromantic terms it could be considered like a sympathy or a correspondence. That at some point in time it was just a plot of land, but over time as people were buried there or things died there, and more people were buried there, and more things died there. As death looms over that area, it sort of envelops it with its own energy, and eventually, that's what that area then becomes. So yeah, I'd probably say it's probably the latter. I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you look at like the different definitions of genius loci, like it's pretty much the characteristic of a place, and to a
Hmm.
certain extent,
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
character of a place. So if I just have, I've used this analogy before. I get to use it now. It's awesome. If I have a white room, okay, and I sit you at a table, it's just pure white, okay, and I bring out, say, a bowl of spaghetti to you, it's going to be a bit strange. And if I come and bring this bowl of spaghetti to you and be like, welcome to an Italian restaurant, you're going to be like, this isn't very Italian. It's just a white room. You know what I mean? Uh, this is very strange. I'm in a white room. This guy's giving me a bowl of spaghetti. Um, but if I was to say, put colors of the Italian flag, all over the restaurant. Have a certain type of music that's from a particular, like from like Naples or something playing. I have things that are reminiscent of a particular town in Italy. That would then speak of characteristics of Italy.
Hmm.
So say someone from Italy was to visit this restaurant now, they are going, if they are able to relate to it, like, oh, I this reminds me of childhood, or this reminds me of home, and so forth. This place now emanates this character of Italy.
Italy. Mhm.
So I would say, in an analogy to the cemetery, that like tombstones, graves, and so forth, mausoleums, and also the dead within there, it really does kind of help procure this essence of death. So yeah, I mean, can the gatekeepers, the cemetery gatekeepers, be the genius loci? They might be the results of that particular character of that area.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, they it might attract those things. So like I mean, this is all kind of up in the air. Like, do
Right.
do
Yeah.
do the spirits come there because they're attracted to it, or does this particular environment kind of create the
Huh.
fertile ground for these spirits to evolve and spring out of? You know,
Exactly.
just like when the that room that was once a white room has now been decorated with things of Italy, is now emanating this feeling of Italy because of the decorations and so forth. So it's the character for sure invokes feelings, invokes emotions. So that might be the same thing for the cemetery. The actual atmosphere uh, invokes particular spirits forth, and yeah, I think I might have answered. It's a very abstract question, but I think I possibly answered it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever come across anything like, that notion. You would think it'd be obvious, but no, I've always looked at necromancy as either its classical traditional thing of divination through the dead until we got smart enough to know that the dead doesn't really know much more than we know in life. Um, and now in modern terms, it's just working with the dead in any sort of spiritual capacity. And that's kind of how I've always looked at it. It's working with the dead in any kind of spiritual capacity. But to think of necromancy as working with the energy of a cemetery or a battlefield or something like that, as opposed to the spirits that might inhabit it, is and that those spirits that do inhabit it, if they can't wander and if they can't leave unless you take them, um, would that make them Genius Loci? And I guess so. I guess that would make them Genius Loci, with the characteristics of death, I guess. I don't know. I feel like we would need to have a necromancer, somebody who like consistently works with the dead, or the death essence, uh, to chime in on that one. But
Well,
I find it very fascinating.
well, it kind of reminds me of like the I wish I knew more about them, but the Nanga pots where they have like the bone, particular bones of a deceased person who died by suicide or murder or something, and
Hmm.
these they are carrying the essence of that spirit within that pot, I believe, right? I'm
Right.
sure there's a lot more nuances to it. I wish I knew more about it, but it's not exactly like they keep it at the graveyard. So in
No.
a way, it's like a small grave right then and there.
Yeah.
So um, I mean, so are you thinking can the genius loci be like displaced in a different environment and still exist?
I mean, if it's the dead, then the answer would be yes. But then if it's See, so then that wouldn't make it a Genius Loci anymore because now it was moved. But I don't know, man. There's a lot of nuance in there that I think no one's really explored, and this is exactly why this type of thing is necessary. These types of discussions, because I would have never thought of any of half of this stuff that we're talking about right now, when it comes to the dead and Genius Loci and things like that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I. Hmm.
I
I
think I
mean,
think possibly.
have you ever considered moving a Genius Loci? I don't know. I never even fathomed that. I always thought that they were part of the land, and I would honor them there, and that would be it. And if I needed to ask them anything like petition, which is rare, there's no need to petition them. But if I did, I would go to them. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I like not like in displacing, but like for instance, if I was to, so you have this essence of death within the graveyard. If I was to decorate, like going back to the analogy of the Italian restaurant, if I was to decorate my ritual room with, the skulls of, creatures and graveyard dirt and have it like really dark and things and all of these different visual stimulants to really help invoke this essence of death. And I actually had like bones within the room. I'm not in a graveyard, but I have created that essence to a certain extent.
Hmm.
Um, so that's why I brought up the Nanga the pots and so forth. So technically that would then become the genius loci because that is the character of that particular place, and therefore certain it will attract certain spirits who behave and or uh, spirits of a particular nature,
Right.
right? So I don't know about, I guess displacing would be the wrong word, but creating that Loci outside of the cemetery. So, in other words, we're kind of talking more about an essence, you
Hmm.
know, not exactly having to do with, um, not exactly having to do with the graveyard. Like the whole thing. I forget in linguistics, what I forget what it is, but like the cat and the word cat aren't exactly connected. You know what I mean? So like you could say that someone has the speed of a cat or something like that, so they take
Right.
on characteristics that we know. So this essence is much more malleable than just being, located in one spot. So the essence can
Okay.
be created, it could be replicated and so forth if it's carried about the right way. Um, Man, I feel like I'm straying off far from
No,
the
dude,
actual question.
this is exactly what this is for, man. So we can flesh out these topics because again, I would have never thought of that. And if I contemplate it myself and only use myself as, the sounding board, then, it's just going to end up being an echo chamber. So it's always good to bounce, ideas and opinions off of other, legitimate practitioners. So
Mm.
no, you're
So yeah,
you're doing great.
like to state the question, can the cemetery guardian of the cemetery gates, can they be considered the genius loci? That
Genius
was
Loci.
the okay.
Yes.
I don't think they are that. They're just part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
genius loci is more of the essence
Right.
that they partake in.
Okay. I like that. All right. I like that. Very, very interesting, man. These were some interesting topics, and it took us to over an hour. I was not expecting that. I didn't think three topics would have taken us over an hour. So that's good to know. So before we round it out here, let's do a bit of a Q&A. I'm sure you got some questions on your side, and I've got a
Not
few
too
over here.
many. I'm a bit barren over here. I have a few people who've been pretty loyal so far. Um, uh, John Jonaselu. I don't. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. Wouldn't a genius loci not meet the requirements of necromancy because you aren't working with a spirit that was once living? Um,
So that would be true for the Genius Loci itself, but we're talking about within a cemetery itself, which is a place, right? So you would assume that if spirits of the place are within a cemetery, and they're stuck usually there, like the gatekeepers, while I can take the dead out of the cemetery and bring them home with me and venerate them on my altar, I can't take the gatekeeper. So, or at least I've never heard of anyone ever taking the gatekeeper. In my mind, that would make the gatekeeper stuck there, which would make him a genius Loki. So that's sort of the angle that we're asking Julio Jones or whatever you said his name was.
Julio Jones.
Sorry, I don't know what you said his name was.
Yeah, wouldn't a genius Loki not meet the requirements of necromancy because you aren't working with a spirit that was once living? I think the actual location and what is within that location are conducive to the actual genius Loki.
Yeah.
Back to my analogy of the Italian restaurant. If it's just a white room where I'm serving you spaghetti, it's going to be a bit weird. If it's just an Italian restaurant with all the decorations, but we're serving you Mexican food, is going to be a bit weird. You know what I mean? I think both of those are elements that actually create the genius Loki. So to um, to say that it's not exactly necromancy, I mean, to a certain extent, I could see that. If necromancy is exclusive to just working with the dead, um, but then if we are getting into essence and something a little more abstract, the spirit of the dead, the actual essence and spirit of death, then working with the genius Loki, like if I was like I said, decorate my room in just graveyard stuff and skulls and so forth, then I would consider that somewhat on a necromantic level because I'm working with the essence of death, even though I am not working with an actual chthonic spirit.
I like it. I hope Julio Jones likes it. Um, Cam Muni Communi says, "Is there anything I should know before trying to contact angels or spirits?" Yeah. If you don't have a solid uh, background in any kind of occult, esoteric, or mystical tradition or system, especially ones that deal with spirits, I would say develop a foundation. Anybody that recommends that you can just jump right into spirits without any kind of background is either doesn't know what you're doing or they just don't like you and they're trying to get you hurt. You should not only have a background in some sort of tradition, but you should also know how to protect yourself because not everybody's going to approach it from the Grimtrad way. I know that, but even spirits that you think are good, quote unquote, benevolent. You may need protection from not because they're evil or anything, but because their energy might be too intense or something along those lines. So yeah, I would have a solid background in some kind of tradition. I'm partial to grimoire tradition, so but yeah. Uh, Quinn, anything you want to add to that?
My wife just recently had one of her friends ask me where they could get a black scry mirror because they've been watching my content and have kind of been like leaning in towards that. And first thing I asked is like, what do they need a scry mirror for?
Yeah,
And it was like, well, and I was like, look into the Magus, read into drawing spirits into crystals, um, and get acquainted with the tradition, get acquainted with the system and the protocols in place before you really try to go, do anything extreme. That is the advice I would give. You start traditional, and then once you get that down, then you can start to experiment with things and see where you could go from there because at least you'll have a good foundation to work off of. But yeah, I don't want to fearmonger and be
yeah,
like, oh, if you do it wrong, your house is going to be haunted and so forth. But I mean, that's possible.
it is
That is
possible.
possible. Hate to say it. But yeah, it won't be if anything bad were to happen, it wouldn't be anything you couldn't fix
Yeah,
magically. But at the same time, if you don't know how to fix it in the first place, you might be a little screwed. And
yeah, you might not want to start.
yeah, you might not be able to deal with that spirit's energy, like Joe said. And other than that, it might be parasitic. It might like to feed off of your energy as well. So yeah, you got to be, and it's not even like they're malevolent. That's just like we eat food. That's we are sometimes food to some spirits. So I would
That's true.
keep that in mind. You have any other questions over there?
Yeah, Janelle Longoria says, I have a funny question. Well, she has two questions. The first one is, what if they refuse your blood? I mean, if they, well, so you mean like if you just outright offer it and they don't ask for it? I guess that's possible. But usually, if they ask for it, I've never had a case where they ask for something and then they deny it once it's given. I've denied them. They've asked me for blood, and I'm like, you're crazy. But there's never been a case where I just offered blood and they didn't ask for anything. But in the times that they asked for it and I gave them animal blood, they've always accepted. So I've never come across a case where they denied it. I guess you would just go ahead and negotiate another type of thing like you would when they deny your request, because that happens to me often. They'll say no to the request and then or to the payment, and then we'll have to work something out. But if they request blood, then usually they accept it. I don't know if you have a different opinion, Quinn.
No, I pretty much stated how I feel about blood
Well, yeah,
offering earlier.
don't do it.
I honestly find it hard to believe that a spirit is going to reject the blood. I guess it
Yeah,
happened. But I mean, you offer it. I mean, there's a good chance it's not the spirit you intended it for is going to. There might be
that
something else lingering around that's going to feed on that.
yes, verification is key, people. Verification is key. All right, I only got a couple more here, and then we can close it out. Josh on the goal says, "Can I use Hermetic Magic to try it out, or do you have to go all the way?" Well, this is a little interesting. Um, so I guess technically, anytime, I am working a system that I'm not a part of, and I want to see if I want to add it to my own practice, I'm just trying it out. So in a way, I can't tell you no. You're free to just try it out. But at the same time, there may be how do I want to word this? There may be like some kind of, I don't know if disrespect is the right word, but sometimes spirits don't like to be bothered if you don't really want to bother them. I know if you're going to be working hermetics, you're probably not going to be working with any spirits. But I I don't know if you want to go through all of what you need to go through just to see if it works. Right, that's where I'm coming into with the disrespect. It's like you're kind of wasting your time if you're just wanting to see if it works. Um, I can't tell you no, but yeah, I wouldn't. I would really only go for the systems that really call to you and that you think that you really want to take all the way. Now, you might not. You might get so far into it and then find out this might not be for you, and that's fine. But I personally wouldn't go into something just to try it out, right? Magic is, or the occult isn't, a new ice cream flavor or something like that. You can just try it out. Yeah, I wouldn't. So,
Yeah. Of course, when it comes to trying things out, I try things out and I experiment, but within the parameters of what I am doing.
yeah,
Um, and it usually like if I like me implementing the black scrying mirror into my triangle of art, that has I'm trying it out, but it has also been done by other practitioners that are
yeah.
successful with, and it's
Crowder
not
did
too
it. Go
yeah,
on.
it's not too far off from like the shoe stone, crystal ball.
Exactly.
So, when it comes to trying things out, there isn't too much wrong with it, but you just have to make sure that you like Joe said, you approach the tradition on its own terms and you give respect to it. If you're not sure it will work, then it most likely won't work.
Yeah.
If there's that doubt, I'm not a psychological model type guy, but that is one of the points where you really do need that that faith and that intention that really drives it home. If how many athletes do you think go into a tournament or something? I'm not an athletic person, but how many athletes go into like say a runner goes into a race, not really sure if they're going to win or not, and kind of is doubtful
Right.
about it. You kind of need that drive in the first place. That like, no, I can win this. I can do it.
Mhm.
So when you're just trying it out just to see if it works, that right there is built on a premise of doubt. As Hangry Viking says, doubt is doubt, and it's the killer of all things magic, and that is true. I am not a psychological model guy, but doubt does not help. There are some practitioners out there that think if you get their protocols all the way right, that even if you don't believe it, it's going to happen. But I find it hard to believe that you're going to go through all of the protocols to the
If you
T
don't believe
without
it.
believing. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent answer. Thank you, man. So since nobody's asking, what is a genius Loki? Well, hopefully you heard our answer a few minutes ago. Demi is Eros. We answered that earlier. Hey, what's going on, Mystic? Hey, Damian Walker, what's up, brother? Glad to have you. Gabe 101 says, "Is it possible for our magic to be swiped away?" I guess he means like, can our magic be taken from us? So we don't have magic, like it's I don't know, like it was given to us or something like that. Everyone, it's a natural ability that everyone has. However, I do believe that it is possible for other practitioners to maybe suppress your efforts. I'm not going to say they're suppressing your magic, but I mean, I guess that's what it is. But I don't want it to sound like it's like, you know how it is on like TV or something like that, where, they put a binding spell on you or whatever, and now you can't do anything. It's not like that. They do things for you or to you to sort of knock you off your game so that way your magic doesn't work. So say for example, if when you go into ritual, you're supposed to be focused, right? You're supposed to have your mind on the task. You're supposed to meditate beforehand to push everything else out, and you're only focusing on the task at hand. They might introduce an element of confusion, so that way you can't focus, right? So you might go through with the spell, but since you went through it, with this chaotic sort of a mindset, your results are going to be either non-existent or lackluster, right? So it looks like, like they've got you bound and they're suppressing your magic, but it's more they did something to you to cause you to not do things properly, which then has an effect on your magic. So I'm going to say no, but it's a slow no, and I guess a quick yes. I guess the quick answer is yes, but to flesh it out, no.
It would be easy for the person just trying things out, as we were talking about earlier. It'd be easy for that person to take away that magic. That's for sure. Um, it so like you could take away magic, like say for instance, I've seen it in hoodoo where they will use bleach or like ammonia as to pretty much like taking like a like an egg, like someone having an egg put on their property, and that egg having to do with some type of baneful magic, and then taking that egg and then
Mhm.
putting it into bleach to just totally wash it away
Yeah.
because bleach kills magic. We could talk about magic like that will kill magic. Um, but as in your innate ability to be able to work with the cosmic forces around you, no one can really take that. I think you could take that. You suppress it more than anyone else can. And depending on your training, it'd be pretty hard for someone to really put a dent in some strong spiritual armor. And that's where like the mysticism comes into play. I've often
Hmm.
said mysticism are two separate things, but mysticism comes into play because that's where you build your spiritual armor. That's where you have your meditations. That's where you have your contemplations, and that's where you build up to your higher self, and your aspirations are guided towards lofty goals and so forth. So then it's hard for people to really knock you off your pedestal because they can't even touch you because your spiritual armor is so strong. There's no way that they could really sway you.
Amen.
And then at the same time, then you also have your practical wards. It would be pretty hard, I think, for someone to really curse or hex me. They could try if they want, but I think it would be pretty hard for someone to curse or hex me with all of the safety protocols that I take
I say the same
magically
thing, and I
within the
get it all the
circle.
time.
Good luck. You know, concerning the cosmology in which grimoire tradition is built, and the protection, like a Solomonic magic is like, if not 90, like 80% is like around like 75% protection.
Yep.
Everything we have has to do with some type of protection and spiritual authority.
Hmm.
Um, so on the practical level, if you have enough protection with wards and so forth, it'll be a little hard, but it's even harder to knock someone off their magical pedestal if they have strong spiritual armor. That is,
Amen.
they have those higher aspirations, they have morals, they have ethics, they have focus and so forth. Those are great virtues for a magician.
Amen, brother. All right. Let's do one more question here. Demi is Eros has the last question, but before that, I just want to shout out the Striking Rainbow. They basically put in just a couple words what I was trying to say the whole time about how your magic can be suppressed. They said they subdue by attacking the mind, and yes, that is exactly what I was trying to say. They attack your mind, which knocks you off your game and might cause lackluster results in your magic, which makes you think you've been bound, which I guess that's what they did, but there's a nuance behind it. So thank you for that. But the last question is from Demi, is Eros, and it's actually about what you just said, Quinn. They asked, is there a science behind how bleach kills magic? And we'll end it with that question there. Is there a science behind how bleach kills magic? I think I have a
Um,
theory.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what it'd be a theory, right? Um, so if when we look at a lot of magica materia, it usually corresponds to something. So, like for instance,
There it is.
hyssop and anise and like basil and so forth. The things that I would wrap around my aspergillum for blessing the ritual
Mhm.
room, all of those herbs are known to be, I don't know the exact medical term, but they're good for you. They're
Benefits.
anti-inflammatories and so forth. They're good for you, like mint and all that, hyssop and so forth. And so these magical materia, that's just an example. So the magical materia usually corresponds to something that helps you. Like for instance, the black dagger that I use to trace a circle with, that's a Saturnian dagger, and Saturn is known throughout the grimoires to strike fear into spirits and to keep them at bay. So that correspondence right there is what matches with it. So when we
Yeah.
look at bleach, what is bleach do exactly? You know what I mean? If it's you, if you get on your clothes, it corrodes it. It'll bleach your clothes if you put too much on there, and it'll rip it apart. I mean, if you put ammonia and bleach together, guess what you got? Mustard gas. Bleach by itself is a bit of a dangerous chemical, you know. So when you think about it within that context, on this, on the astral and on the spiritual side, being such a corrosive or a lethal chemical, it reflects onto the spiritual side as also being dangerous to anything that can thrive in within the spiritual realm.
Amen. Yes, there's not much I want to add to that. Yeah, I agree. If we just look at how things correspond in magic, for those of you who are familiar with my video here on TikTok and on my YouTube, where I go into my 5 steps of getting involved with magic. Step 2 is understanding your correspondences and understanding how those correspondences interact with each other, right? And so if we look at bleach and what bleach does and what it how it helps us, in small quantities, it kills things. It kills bacteria. It kills viruses and all this other stuff. And so if you're looking at someone doing black magic against you, most of the time that black magic is supposed to infect you like a virus or like bacteria, right? It's supposed to infect your life and cause problems with your job and your relationship and your health and all this other stuff. So if you can kill that infection, why not? So that's kind of how I would say the bleach aspect of destroying magic can be looked at. Um, so that's what I would say there. So acid could also then, yeah, theoretically, I'd be careful though. Using acid, I don't want you to hurt yourself. But yeah, I would say yeah. Um,
Please,
so
no one, do not mix ammonia and bleach.
yeah, 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 yeah. You don't want to hurt yourself, guys. Please, please, please be safe out there. But all right. Well, I think unless you have any other questions on your end, Quinn, that wraps our third weekly live stream.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a feat. It's awesome, and I like this having a few, questions, a little bit of a curriculum to go over.
Yeah,
It helps a lot. Uh, the second question was for sure something that could just keep going. You could write a whole book. You could write a whole book
oh
on that. I was like, oh my God, like
yeah,
I looked up, or I started reading into like the philosophy of will this morning, trying to write up something as like some type of discourse, and I'm like, oh my God, this goes beyond any
yeah,
like
dude.
small answer, and that's seeing how large that topic is. It's just like, so how can you even say that? That this is for sure that spirits have free will when free will itself is such a like widely discussed and debated topic. Like it's just so crazy. But having this curriculum and being able to study into these things and look, and so we could talk about it later, I think we should do it again,
Yeah,
like
man.
on.
Yeah, dude. Listen, I enjoy these. This is my second weekly stream that I do, and I'm hoping either this weekend or next weekend there will be a third person that I'll be streaming with live on a weekly basis. So I truly enjoy this. I could talk about the occult all day, every day. There's to me there's no other way to live life outside of occultism, esotericism, and mysticism. Like Diane Fortune says, everybody would be all the better. Life would be all the better if all we did was understand just a little bit of occultism, esotericism, and mysticism.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, man, thank you for spending an hour and a half with me. I truly appreciate it, and thank all of you for being here. Thank you guys for your questions and your comments throughout. It's been wonderful. We plan to make this a weekly thing, so if you enjoyed this, please do come back next week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're not already following me, please do follow me, and also follow Quinn, aka Man of Medim. He is a fellow Solomonic magician, and his setup is something to be envied. So, if you're interested in seeing exactly how magic is done from the Solomonic perspective, please give Quinn a follow. He's a wealth of knowledge, guys.
Thank
But
you.
all right, man. Any final words?
No. I always like to say Jesus loves you.
And he loves you too, brother. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night, man.
All right, you as well, man. Take it easy.
Have a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Truly appreciate each and every one of you. Again, hopefully next week we'll be here 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and tomorrow I will be live with Alchemic Mason. So if you have an interest in Hermeticism, Greco-Egyptian philosophy, or religion, please join me tomorrow 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be live with Alchemic Mason, doing a reading of the Corpus Hermeticum. But yeah, that'll be it for me, everybody. Thanks for being here, and as always, seek the mysteries. Peace.